There is a wide variety of benefits available to veterans with the Service Connected Disabilities, but too often, veterans do not take full advantage of them. Stay with us as we guide you through the process of filing for a Service Connected Disability. Thanks for tuning in to Veterans Voices. I'm your host, Joshua Zebley, and my co-host is Elena Kim. Tonight, we'll be talking about filing a claim for a service-connected disability. If you want to be part of the conversation or you have any questions, just use the QR code on your screen to join us in Zoom webinar. We would love for you to be part of the show. I want to welcome our first guest joining us via Zoom, Adam French of the Riverside County Veteran Service Office, and Buck Carmichael next to me, Assistant County Veteran Service Officer for Contra, Costa County. Welcome, Adam and Buck, and hello, Elena. So today we're going to be talking about what a Service Connected Disability is, filing a claim, basically as we like to call it, from start to finish. So we have a few slides. So the first slide here is a Service Connected Disability, and you're going to see it on the screen here. So Service Connected Disability is a disability that was caused by or aggravated by military service. You need a current diagnosis. You need evidence that something happened in service. Medical nexus equals service-connected disability. So I'm going to have Buck and Adam get really deep into this so everyone understands what that is. And I'm going to start with you, Buck.
Sure. And, I like to, when I'm meeting with veterans from our office here in Contra Costa County, flip it around. It's a disability that was caused by service. And the VA really makes it very clear what they're looking for to establish a service-connected disability. And the first thing is something going on right now, a current diagnosed disability. And that's where I like to always begin when I speak with my clients or veterans that I'm working with. The second thing is something tangible that we can point to in service, and that can be an injury, an accident, an exposure, but something that's tangible that we can point to that happened in service. And then the third thing is a medical nexus or an opinion from a doctor that joins the current diagnosis with what happened in service.
The way you explained it, can you say it again? You kind of explained it backwards, but it made sense. I want to make sure everybody heard that.
Sure. So I always begin with that current diagnosis.
Okay, that's the most important thing. If it doesn't bother you now, then you don't have a current diagnosis, right?
Right. And it also, when you go and get that diagnosis, it also establishes some treatment for it too, that you can point to and say, hey, this is what's going on currently. And that's really what the VA is looking for. They aren't going to look at something that's not even considered as a disability.
Okay.
Can I add to this, Buck? Everything you said is spot on. A lot of veterans come in and say, I want to file a claim, right? And they've never been to a doctor to give them that current diagnosis. So if you're watching this right now and you are a veteran, we will always encourage you, go to your doctor and talk about the conditions that are affecting you. Do that now, do that today. And if you don't have a doctor, then you can come into your CVSO and we can actually help you enroll with the VA for your health care.
Adam, thank you.
And to add on to that,
go ahead.
The way I always like to explain it to those who might be confused is to look at it as a workers' compensation claim for things that happened while you were in the service. And some of the struggles that happen with this is that we are, and oftentimes we're trying to prove this incident or this injury that happened many years ago. So the better we can establish that evidence, that diagnosis and that medical nexus, the better the claim will be.
So maybe we can talk a little bit about what evidence do you need?
Sure, and really, if you don't have that diagnosis, the VA provides a tool for a veteran. If you're watching this right now and you're thinking, hey, my knee hurts, my back hurts, they provide a tool, something called an intent to file that you can put on with the VA. It bookmarks the date, and it allows you a full year to go back and actually, gather up whatever evidence you might need. And the evidence that a veteran should be looking for before filing a claim is that current diagnosed disability with treatment, something that happened in service. And that's a big question there too. I talk to a lot of veterans who say, I hurt myself, but I didn't go in and get treatment for service. And that can be a hindrance in establishing a disability. If we can refer back to slide 1, I really think of it as that algebra equation. Mm-hmm. If you can fill in the blanks on each one of those, what the VA is looking for, you give yourself the best chance at establishing that service-connected disability. So if you don't have a current diagnosis, that's something you should be looking for. If you don't have service treatment records that would support you being seen by a doctor while you're in service, it's important that you provide a personal statement regarding what happened in service, or someone that you served with may be able to provide something called a buddy statement within the VA that corroborates that statement as well. But what we're really looking to do is establish all three of those variables in the equation. And during that year time frame, when a veteran establishes that intent to file, they have that year to go ahead and get all three things that are needed. The nexus may be the more difficult things to establish prior to that. However, if a veteran comes in with something in service that's tangible and a current diagnosis, the VA will go out and obtain a medical nexus for that veteran regarding the disability.
Yeah, and sometimes this can be scary for a veteran, right? Like there's a lot, it sounds like it's a lot, right? I have to go to a bunch of doctor's appointments, I have to gather a bunch of evidence, and I also have to maybe work with this third party, my county veteran service office. So I really want to emphasize, Buck mentioned the intent to file. This is a form. It is not a scary form. You could probably fill it out yourself and submit it to the VA. But if you have any issues with that, come into your county veteran service office and they can help you fill it out. It's a one-page form. It has stuff like your name, your contact information, what branch of service were you in, and then there's just a box that you check letting the VA know that, look, I don't have all this stuff with me right now, but I do intend to file a claim, and so I want you to sort of hold this date as a placeholder for me, which give me some time to get this stuff together, right? But then, like, fast forwarding all the way forward, let's say that you do have a successful claim and the VA does approve it. The great thing about submitting that intent to file is they will back pay you all the way to the date that you submitted that very first form to the VA, not necessarily the date when you gathered all your evidence. So that's a really cool thing about the intent to file for me.
Yeah, that's a great point. Adam, I'm going to ask real quick. In our definition of a service-connected disability, we say a current disability that was caused by, and this is the part I want you to help us with, or aggravated by military service. Can you explain what that means?
So yes, definitely. So aggravation really is if the veteran was accepted into service with a certain injury. Let's say they had a knee injury from high school, and the service accepts them into service. This is where the VA, you prove to the VA that your actions in service aggravated that injury beyond its normal progression. And that's really the key part in identifying aggravation is that phrase of beyond its normal progression. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, there's 4 avenues of service connection, right? We've got a slide on this too. So let's pull that slide up and talk about those, and then you can elaborate on that one, Adam.
Sure. So again, if there was a pre-existing condition that did not preclude that veteran or that individual from becoming or from joining the service, however, it was an injury, that if the service aggravated that beyond its normal progression, that is something that the VA can still service connect. And then there's direct service connection. That's a very common one, more along the lines of what we've been talking about. Injuries or illnesses that were caused in or because of service, that a back injury or something else that happened directly as a result of your military service. Your presumptive military or your presumptive medical conditions are generally your exposures. Most people have heard of Agent Orange, burned pits, those types of things. And then secondary issues are generally when you have a certain medical condition that was caused by a current service-connected condition, not necessarily directly because of service, but that service-connected condition ended up causing a new medical condition.
And just to piggyback on the aggravation, there is a presumption of soundness when someone joins the military. You may have had a sports injury or a surgery prior to that you reported prior to going into the military. And the way I explain it to the vets that I work with is, maybe you had a knee problem going in, and when you got out, all of a sudden you had the knee of a 50-year-old and you were 22. That was clearly aggravated by your service, and they would definitely rate the difference in between those. So it almost protects the veteran when they go in that, yeah, you have it, you have a disability, maybe it's a minor one, but we're presuming you to be sound as well when you join. So when you get out, if you're having a severe problem, there is at least the presumption of soundness that you can kind of fall back on when you're putting forth that claim.
So Adam mentioned the direct avenue, presumptive avenue, secondary, and aggravation we've been talking about for a while. I think presumptive conditions, which came out of the PACT Act, right? Which we did a show on in January of this year, and then also a couple of years before. I think maybe 4,000 people watched our show, by far one of the most popular shows we have, and throughout the VA right now, still folks are filing PACT Act claims. Will you talk about that just briefly, what a presumptive claim is?
Absolutely, and a presumptive claim doesn't necessarily involve an injury from service. They're presuming that if you served in a certain area, you were exposed to a certain type of toxin, and they presume that to have caused certain types of disabilities. The most common one that you'll probably hear a lot of is Agent Orange for Vietnam veterans.
Yeah.
I think we're up to about 20 different disabilities that they would presume someone that was in the country of Vietnam during the Vietnam War to have been exposed to Agent Orange, which was a defoliating substance that they used around the bases to kill the foliage so that the enemy can't, sneak up. But that it was a substance that they determined as a toxin. And those that served in Vietnam that have diabetes, that would be a presumed condition of that type of exposure.
So just to clarify, Buck, I don't need, walking into a county veteran service office, I don't need to know which avenue of service connection that I want to file a claim for, right?
Absolutely not. The individual that you're meeting with should have that knowledge. That's based on the accreditation that individual has. So this is classroom 101 for filing a claim.
This is to me, I look at this as this is strategy talk, right? And so this is why it's great to come in and talk to an accredited claims representative, which, by the way, they're free to talk to. All the services are free at your county veteran service office. You don't have to pay anyone for this knowledge, right? The reason why I would encourage people is because that's your strategy guy or gal, right? You know that something happened to you in the military. You know that you could file a claim because maybe your buddies have talked to you about it. But each veterans' individual circumstances of service, circumstances of disability, circumstances of life, circumstances of medical conditions, that's all different. And so that's why you want to get into the CVSO so that they can help you with the strategies. So this avenues of, ways to get service connected, direct, presumptive, secondary, aggravation. You don't have to memorize that. You don't have to know it. We're talking about strategies that your representative should come to you and talk to you about.
I want to dig a little deeper into secondary because I feel like that's the one that because if you don't even remember that you might not know that you have a secondary because we're not doctors, right? So if for some reason your calf hurts and you have a back injury, you're not going to associate that with you. So you would never think about, well, I hurt my calf in the military. No, but it's related to your back. So just when you're filing those claims, and we have great VSOs throughout California, they can ask you, they'll know what an appropriate secondary condition may be, right? So you're absolutely right, Elena. They don't need to know, but we need to know to ask them, and we need to bring stuff out of them that they feel may not be relevant, but we'll be asking those questions to say, does this hurt? Does your left knee hurt because your right knee hurts? And maybe I can get either one of you, Buck or Adam, to just tell us a couple of common secondaries so the veterans that are watching will think, oh, I didn't realize that was from that, and maybe now they'll know.
Sure. I think the one we see most in our office is we see a lot of orthopedic conditions. Obviously, military service, a lot of vigorous training, physical demands, backs, knees, ankles, things of that nature will often cause secondary conditions because of a gait change in the way you hold your weight, in the way you walk. Because you're modifying the way you move, you might now put more pressure on a different part of your body, which would then lead to a disability on that part. That would be considered a secondary. Mm-hmm. If you're looking to file a secondary claim, it doesn't fall under a presumed category necessarily. So it's always good to get the opinion of a doctor on how one relates to the other.
Adam, do you have any other examples? And I want to ask you, I think you just answered it for me, Buck. Would the VA ever do it without you knowing? A secondary for something?
So yes, there are times where the VA, as they're reviewing a claim, may either automatically, as a result of an exam, the compensation and pension exam, identify that secondary condition, or if they are reviewing the medical records and they notice something that was missed as far as a claim, so they may find a medical condition in there that was not claimed, that they may invite the veteran to file a claim if they don't process that. So that's a common thing for the VA to do.
Yeah, and Adam mentioned the C&P exam, the compensation pension exam. So stay tuned because we're going to talk about that later in the show.
That's right. So how to prepare to file a claim, I believe we have a slide on that as well. So this is basically what to bring to the Veteran Service Office. And there's your discharge papers, medical evidence, banking information, marriage license, dependent information. So Buck or Adam, either one of you, can you explain to us why this is so important? And out of that list, maybe one you don't need right now and one you do need because you can't move on with the claim without that. So you have D214, medical evidence, banking information, marriage license, and dependent information.
Well, I believe the DD-214 is the most important thing for a veteran service rep in order to advise the veteran. On the DD-214, it tells the length of service, some of the places they serve, some of the medals or personal awards, the narrative of discharge, the character of discharge, and all of those things are going to help the veteran service rep determine what benefits that veteran is eligible for. And of course, if that veteran is eligible for them, we'll help them apply for those at that same time. So in my opinion, that DD-214, member copy 4, there's a couple of different copies that come, but member copy 4 identifies the narrative and the character of discharge, and those are two of the most important things that a VSR needs to review in order to determine eligibility.
Adam, would you agree?
Definitely. You have to, establish that service and again, that, as you alluded to, that may help you identify some other service areas that they served and things that you might be able to file for as a result of that service. But beyond that medical evidence, as we've been talking about, that medical evidence is paramount. You have to have that show those medical records show that the medical condition exists, or if it's in your service medical records as well, kind of tie all that together.
And we're talking about records really quick, and I want to just share, because not a lot of people understand that the VA is separate from your county veteran service office. So the county veteran service office isn't automatically going to have this information on file for you. That's a common misconception. Your county veteran service office is not the VA, and so they don't have this information automatically. That's why we're saying you need to bring this with you. Now, here's here's a secret that not a lot of CVSOs will share with you. Once you bring these records into your county veteran service office, you ask them to upload it to their system. You'll have a backup copy at your county veteran service office in case you lose that DD 214 or that marriage license. You can always go back and ask them for a copy. That's a little secret that not everyone will tell you.
And just to add on to that, the VA is not the Department of Defense either, so your records don't automatically go from the military to the VA. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about the claims process in the next segment too.
So in addition to your DD-14 medical evidence, you want to bring your banking information because the VA is going to set up direct deposit rather than send you a check. Pretty self-explanatory, right?
Yes.
Marriage license, because if you get over 30%, you can add your dependents. But I want to get quickly into what is a BDD. So we have a slide on that as well. How to prepare to file the claim if you're currently still active duty.
Sure. And now service members are actually encouraged to go ahead and file their claims before they discharge, 180 days prior to discharge. There is one caveat to this. They do need to provide their service treatment records when they file the claim, because when the VA goes to the National Personnel Records Center, they will not have a copy of those. They'll still be within the unit because that service member is not a veteran at that time. So it does run a different path, and it does require your service treatment records to be uploaded in the beginning.
So you can file that claim 90 days to 180 days, 6 months to 3 months before you're out. You could still do it, but it won't be considered a BDD claim, which is called a benefits delivered at discharge. Basically, they're waiting for you. Decision's been made. Okay. And what I heard,
advice too. So there's also going to be a separation health assessment that needs to be submitted along with a benefits delivery discharge, and that's it can be quite an extensive form to complete by the veteran. So getting in there early is important.
Thank you. Thank you.
And again, you don't have to do any of this on your own. I believe nowadays there is a VA rep on base, so you could work with the VA rep. You could do this on your own, but of course, we always encourage you to use your county veteran service office.
Of course, and I think some bases actually do have them, or right outside of them, right? And what I heard both of you say is bring your DD-14 and your medical records. There'll be a comprehensive overview or look at your DD-14 to see where you've served. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation about filing a claim for a service-connected disability. So stay with us.
We all make more than 35,000 decisions a day. Most are small, but some can be life-changing.
When it comes to taking care of yourself, the most important choices can be hard to make. Like having a tough conversation instead of ignoring a buddy's call.
Or being there for support, not assuming things will just get better.
Or fighting through challenges rather than giving up.
And while we all face thousands of choices every day, there's one that can make all the difference. Today, make the decision to be there. For the veterans in your life, for your community, for yourself. Learn more at BeThereForVeterans.com.
Welcome back to Veterans Voices. We were talking about filing a claim for a service-connected disability. If you want to be part of the conversation or you have any questions, just use the QR code on your screen to join us in Zoom webinar. We would love for you to be part of the show. So in last segment, we talked about a lot. We defined a service-connected disability. We talked about the avenues to a service connection, how to prepare to file a claim, how to prepare to file a claim if you're still in the military. So for this section, we're going to talk about what happens once you actually submit that claim, right? And it's a process that once you submit it from the VSO or from whoever you use, it's kind of out of your hands, right? You've said, here is all the evidence I have. Please make a decision as fast as you can, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. We have a slide, a claim timeline. So claim path, excuse me. So this is the path from when the claim is received all the way until it was decided. And there's a number of steps in there. And these are steps that the VA is going through to make the decision on your claim. We're going to have, we'll start with Adam. Adam, if you can see those. What happens during the claim received process? Does the veteran get notified?
Yeah, so this is the actual VA acknowledgement of the claim submission. So that's where they assign that end product code, and that's where they use to track the claim.
So have they done anything yet in that point? Or are they still, is that the same that happens when you do intent to file?
So yeah, that's just really the initial creation of the claim. That's really the entry of that, and that's when it'll move to the pre-development.
Yeah, and that first claim, when they receive that claim paperwork, it triggers the VA's duty to assist that veteran. So the VA has a duty to help that veteran with the claim. And there's a couple of different avenues. For a veteran that's filing their first claim, the VA refers to it as an original claim. And that timeline is going to increase because there's more development that the VA has to do in order to make the decision. And one of those things is to obtain service treatment records, personnel records. Those usually come from the National Personnel Records Center, the DD-214. Any federal records that are also identified in the claim. So when a veteran does fill out the claim worksheet, you can identify that, hey, I go to the VA in Martinez, or I go to this VA clinic, and they will actually go pull those records as well. So the VA does have to do things, and that's according to the Code of Federal Regulations. So when they do receive, that will trigger their duty to assist by starting to develop on the veteran's service time. So once they do that, they'll go to the National Personnel Records Center. If there's federal records, they'll go to the local VA clinic to pull those. Maybe that's where the current diagnosis is located. When the veteran files the claim, they can also report private treatment records. Mm-hmm. So you can do a release of information, so the VA can go right to your private doctor and obtain those as well. But that's the first initial stage, is they're really gathering up all the evidence and reviewing it. To find out, if we go back to that first slide, what variables are filled in. Is there something that we can point to in service, in the service treatment records? Is there a current diagnosed disability? And in those private records, is there a medical nexus to the military as well?
So does that includes the CMP exam?
Negative.
Not there yet.
Not quite there yet.
Okay, let's get there.
If there is enough evidence that the veteran may have had an injury in service or has a current diagnosed disability, we're still looking for that third variable, that medical opinion that joined what happened in service to the current diagnosed disability. And the VA, as a part of the duty to assist, will send that veteran to a third-party examiner, and that examiner is going to provide that opinion for the VA.
So I actually heard you on the phone earlier this morning, I think, talking to a veteran, and you said, it is my job to get you to a CMP and exam. It's our job to make sure that you have the evidence needed for the VA to say, okay, we see that something happened while you're in, we see that there's a medical nexus, so now we need to get you to a CMP and exam. And I've never heard you say that, but I know you do say it all the time. Adam, do you have anything to add on the initial review of gathering of evidence, and then eventually we'll get to the CMP exam, because I know that's a very important topic.
No, I would just say that this is really why seeing a VSO is important. So that's really where as Buck was kind of talking about, this is where we are identifying what evidence is needed and what evidence to submit and how to make the VA's job easier. The more that we can identify and submit and get you to that CMP exam and get that claim ready, the better, the more successful the claim has to be completed and awarded.
So a C and P exam, just so we're making sure it's clear, it's a compensation and pension exam, not C and P. Compensation, we say it so fast, sorry, we should be saying a little bit clearer. Compensation and pension exam. So after that, the C and P exam, let's tell us about how long that usually takes.
Sure. So in an original claim, they won't order that C&P exam until the evidence is gathered with the service treatment records and the medical records. They want that examiner to be able to review those things prior to the veteran showing up. So I will often get a question, hey, do I need to bring my medical records into this compensation and pension exam? No, it should be a part of the file, and that's something that the examiner should be doing. And it's not done by the VA, at least not in this part of the region. So in the Bay Area, they send them to a third-party examiner. So this examiner is a contract examiner, and oftentimes the VA will say, hey, I was just contacted for this exam. What's this for? So it's not done by the VA. That's an important point. And it is critical to the adjudication of the claim. If you do not show up at the compensation and pension exam, the VA will deny your claim based on a no-show.
Yeah, and when they deny that claim, Buck, it's not the VA, trying to be mean to you, right? This isn't the VA hating on veterans. It's just essentially they're saying we really can't we can't decide in your favor on this claim because we don't have all the evidence that we need, right? So I really want to emphasize to veterans, mentally prepare yourself as you're going through this process. More than likely, there's going to be a medical examination done by a third-party medical examiner. That is a part of your success in this claims process. So what does preparing mean? It means that you want to keep an eye on your phone because you're going to get a call saying, hey, I need to schedule you for this medical exam, right? And then make sure that you've got some transportation on your mind as well, because you're going to need to take some time and go see that medical examiner and get that examination done. If you have any questions about this process, we always encourage you, talk to your CVSO, let them know, hey, I'm feeling a little bit nervous about this, which you don't need to feel nervous about, by the way, but can you give me some tips for what to expect? We're really there to guide you down this path.
I would also add on to that, the representative is not going to be at the exam with you. So this is your chance to be your best advocate during the exam. You know the history of your injury or your illness the best. Going into that exam is important to give that information to the examiner so that they have all the information.
Great point, Adam. Yes.
So we did receive a comment on Facebook from Aglinus Phillips. It says, the VA found an additional claim for me to file. I'm waiting for the rating now. So I think she means that the VA found a secondary condition. Is that what you think, Buck, Adam,
Yeah.
Elena? So that's great evidence that the VA is doing that and that they're letting veterans know that this may be a secondary condition. Is that what you guys think, Buck and Adam? Definitely?
I do. Sometimes in the decision letter that they send the veteran after making a decision, they will identify another disability that they may encourage the veteran to go ahead and file for.
Yep.
So after C&P exam is submitted to the VA already has it, they're reviewing the evidence, and is that the longest part of the claim, you think?
For an original claim, I believe gathering up the service treatment records and all the private records is probably the most time-consuming. It also depends on how many disabilities are filed. If there's a multitude of disabilities, then there has to be different ratings and different pairs of eyes on those to make sure that the rating is correct on it. I did want to add to the C&P exam for veterans, they come quickly oftentimes, so they don't get a lot of notice when they give you these exams, and they only give a veteran one time to reschedule it as well. So it's important to try and make that exam or reschedule it on a time that you know you can. Otherwise, without that exam, it's going to be more than likely a denial.
And
That's a pro tip, Buck.
Yeah, we got lots of pro tips. And we did get a follow-up on the Facebook. It was in her decision letter, so what you said was right in the decision letter. So after the rating, the VA, if the veteran's checking the status of their claim, which we'll get into, they can see that they're preparing the decision letter. So that means the claim has been decided and they're kind of just writing it up at this point.
So I see three different levels when I look in the VA systems to maybe update a veteran on timeline. There's when it's open, they're still gathering evidence. When it's ready for decision, that means that they've gathered all of the evidence that they need to make the decision, and then they put it into a rating decision complete. So that means that they're starting to print the paperwork that goes along with it. Sometimes it can sit there in a ready for decision mode for a month or two, but once it gets rating decision complete, then we can expect it to be promulgated within a day or two.
And there can be times where it moves, so it could be in the ready for decision phase, and they notice something else, and they have to send it back to the evidence gathering, for example, or to do some other part of the claim. So it can move back and forth. So
Certainly, yeah.
So once we see final, are you talking about, is that in the final review stage that you would see, that they're looking at it, then they may notice something else?
yeah, so generally I notice it when they've done the initial review, they've done the evidence gathering, the rater is looking at it and may have found either an error or, as we were talking about before, may have found something else to add on to the claim or invite the veteran to file for. So they may move it out of the ready for decision and move it into an evidence gathering aspect to kind of complete that portion of it before it moves forward again.
So if you see claim decided, does that mean it's done, it's ready? You should be getting something in the mail, and you might want to either check your bank account or call the CVSO that you filed a claim with. Is that at that point already?
It's funny you ask about the bank account, because the bank account usually causes the vet to call into our office and say, hey, why did I end up with this huge deposit in there? So it does take a little bit of time for the letter to actually get to the veteran. But in the meantime, if there's a retroactive benefit, that's going straight into the direct deposit if it was reported on the claim form. So once they make the decision, they promulgate it by sending out a letter, a decision letter, and a decision narrative. The letter indicates what the decision is, how much the veteran would be getting at that point, and then the narrative is behind the letter, and that explains why they came to that decision. And for me, that's one of the primary pieces of information that I'll review with a veteran when they bring in some sort of a VA decision, because that's going to tell me the evidence that the VA used and why they used it to make that decision. So
we have a slide of about how long this takes, and I think the VA has made huge strides over the last 5 to 6 years. So about 140 days. So what is that, 5 months or so? Average number of days to complete a disability claim. Original claim, which you mentioned again, I'm going to have you describe again. Original claim versus new claim.
Sure. So the original claim is the first one that the veteran files with the VA. That means that the VA has a lot more development to do in terms of personnel records and service treatment records. A new claim is any type of claim that's followed after the original claim. And the new claims will probably fall under that 139-day time frame because they don't have as much development to do. And same idea with the original claims. Those will probably be a little bit more than that because they have to develop for a lot more records at that time too.
Earlier, I talked about mentally preparing for this process, and I think this is where veterans really get anxious, right? In 139 days, it can be very lengthy for a lot of veterans, but as Josh said, this is like lightning speed to compared to how things used to be, especially considering that the number of claims that VA is processing has skyrocketed since the PACT Act. So for the number of claims to be able to go up and the processing times to be able to go down, these folks are really working hard to get you a decision as soon as possible. So we want to encourage veterans to be patient. VA is processing thousands of these claims from all around the country. And the actual number here, we have like 139 days. That's an average number, right? So that the actual time that it will take to process your claim is going to vary. It's going to vary depending on the type of claim you filed, like Buck said, and also the content of your claim. You are an individual veteran. This isn't like a one-pager and a yes or no, right? Like they're poring over your details to make sure that they give you a correct decision. So this is your claim, be patient. We're giving you the inside scoop in terms of what's happening behind the scenes, but you don't need to know all this. My biggest tip to veterans is just be patient.
Thank you. So we have a slide and we're going to show everyone how to check the status of their own claim. So www.va.gov/claim or appeal status. So it's a little complicated, but once you do it once, I feel like it can save you a lot of time. And this is going to walk through those steps of the claim path that we showed that Buck and Adam spoke about. Claim received, initial review, their gathering of evidence, claim decided. So this is something I know when I filed, I was checking, way too much. And I think to Elena's advice, be patient. You need to be patient. Veterans can call our office and ask for the status, but we're going to tell them exactly what it says to check your own status. So you can save yourself some time. Adam, I see you nodding your head, right? They're calling us, but unfortunately, we don't know anything more than they do.
And I laugh because a lot of times the status is updated online and it's very vague. And so any time there's a change in there, because it's vague, it's what am I missing? What's going on? Yep. So there's we field a lot of calls for the claim status.
We're going to take a short break, but don't go away. When we come back, we'll conclude our discussion.
Honestly, I'm not really sure why I'm calling. It's just...
I'm having nightmares.
My husband and I, we're just fighting a lot.
I can't get any sleep.
Things just keep getting worse, and it's starting to feel like I can't do this by myself anymore.
We could use some help figuring things out.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you called. Why don't you tell me more about what's going on?
There's no wrong reason to reach out for crisis support. Whatever you're going through, the Veterans Crisis Line is here to help. Visit veteranscrisisline.net to learn more.
Welcome back to Veterans Voices. We're talking about filing a claim for a Service Connected Disability. If you want to be part of the conversation or you have any questions, just use the QR code on your screen to join us in Zoom webinar. We would love for you to be part of the show. So in the last 43 minutes, we've talked about what a Service Connected Disability is, the avenues to a service connection, how to prepare to file the claim, how to prepare to file the claim if you're still in the military, the claim timeline of 140 days on average, the claim path all the way from claim received to claim decided. So in this last segment here, we're going to talk about your claim has been decided and it didn't exactly turn out the way you hoped for. What do we do then? The VA, we have a slide here as well that we're going to throw up there. The VA has an opportunity for you to appeal the denial. So you usually have 1 year of appellate rights, which we'll get a little deeper into there, and then what you need. So we actually did a show about denials and appeals in August of 2024. If you can refer to that for a whole hour of us talking about denials and appeals. But for now, we're gonna briefly give you an intro. So Buck, I'll have you start with there.
Sure. So once a claim is decided by the VA, whether it's a denial or a veteran just doesn't agree with the percentage that's associated with it, the VA provides them a year of appellate rights. And it's really important that the veteran take action within that year, because once that year is over, the VA will consider that a finally adjudicated claim, and they won't go back to it to award any type of retroactive benefits. So the VA provides 3 different options for a veteran if they do disagree with the claim decision. And the first one is a supplemental review. And in order to request a supplemental review within the VA, new and relevant evidence need to be presented. And new is something that's not considered in the first one, and relevant would be regarding what they were missing. So when we refer back to that first slide and what it takes to become service connected for a disability, they're going to be looking at those 3 things. And the relevant part of that evidence needs to address the reason for denial. So that's a supplemental review. That's the one that I like because we're presenting new things
Right.
To the VA that they didn't consider in the first one.
All right. Adam, can you tell us about a higher level review?
Definitely. So the high level review is really where you're trying to identify errors within the evidence or within or the way the VA looked at it or the fact of law that was applied. No new evidence can be presented. You're just identifying what those errors are and presenting that to the VA for them to review and make a decision on.
So for an example on a higher level review, and I refer to them as clear and unmistakable errors, right? Something that's very clear, like they didn't review my medical diagnosis when they made the decision, and they denied me based on the fact that I didn't have a current diagnosis. That would be a perfect reason for a higher level review because the evidence submitted was not reviewed when the decision was made.
So there is one more, or maybe 2 more, actually, avenues for denial appeal. So appeal to the Board of Veterans Appeals. When do we get there? That seems like...
I'm real careful when I get to that level. Those levels tend to take a lot of time. So when you get to that Board of Veterans Appeals level, there's 3 avenues within there. There's a supplemental review, which is added evidence there. There's a direct review where you just ask a judge to review all of the evidence of record. But there's also a hearing that a veteran can request so that they can speak with the judge and tell them their story and what they believe is relevant. No matter what avenue in the Board of Veterans Appeals you choose, it's going to be a 2 to 3 year waiting list on something like that. And that's why I think the supplemental review is the right way to go, because if you are able to provide that new and relevant evidence, if you go back and you look at the decision narrative that the VA issued behind that decision letter and you know exactly why the VA denied you, well, then you can show them the opposite and then ask them to review it. So that's the way I always like to go. It's very rare that I would recommend an appeal. I don't know about you, Adam, but I feel like the appeal route is something that is overused a little bit, and that's caused a large backlog there, and the reason for veterans waiting 2 to 3 years on that.
Yeah, I do agree. So one of the great things about the Appeals Modernization Act is that these paths that we're talking about, the supplemental and the high-level review, that act allows for the movement between lanes as well. So if I've submitted a supplemental and then I submit a higher level, it was still denied and I submit a higher level review, I can still go back to a supplemental claim if I need to. I can't do a higher level review on a higher level review decision, but I can still, if I did a higher level review and I found that there was more evidence that's needed, I can go back and gather that evidence and then submit that supplemental appeal or supplemental review so that can continue to maintain the effective date of that claim and still pursue that in a timely manner. And I would say that the only thing I would add is that as important as it is to file the initial claim by seeing your county VSO is, to get things right, this is really where the county VSOs become important. Understanding those laws, understanding what the VA's decision is. I mean, they're writing in English, but it doesn't always seem like English. It's its own language, and to have a VSO really understand what the VA is saying and why. That's really where you're really going to get that bang for your buck for seeing a VSO and understanding those laws and how to process these.
Can I ask a question, Adam? Earlier, we have this slide up and it says once the VA makes a decision on your claim, you have a year to pick one of these paths for, I got denied and now I want to appeal. But Buck was saying, his real favorite here in terms of the path to appeal is the supplemental review. Is it true that if you're going to use a supplemental review, in other words, if you have new and relevant evidence, that year no longer applies? If I go past 365 days, but all of a sudden I found a new buddy statement or I found some new evidence that's relevant, could I still do a supplemental review?
So the supplemental review could be used for either. It can be used as the main appeal driver, or it's also the form used to reopen a new claim or a previous claims. Let's say it was denied 5 years ago. You can reopen that claim using the supplemental review form. So it has dual purpose. The important thing though is, as we've been discussing, is to file, if you can, file that appeal within that year time period in order to maintain the effective date.
And you guys are saying effective date, that's the date from the original or new claim from the intent to file. It's not from the date that you were denied, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So if you file the intent, if you've continued to process that claim and continue to file appeals within timely appeal periods, then you will, if the VA eventually grants it, it will go back to that date, the intent to file, or the date you opened the claim.
The pay will go back to that date, the back pay.
The back pay, yep.
Yeah.
So we have a veteran watching us from Southern California, the San Dimas area. That he's in an area that doesn't have power right now due to the fires. He has asked if he can post more questions after this is closed. Yes, you can. Please be safe out there. His name is Russell Wood, and if we have any other veterans that are watching us from down there, anywhere, be safe, and we're always available. Sorry, let's get back into that.
Well, I'd like to add on to the supplemental claim. So if you have gone 1 year from that decision, you've lost your ability to do a formal appeal to the Board of Veterans Appeals and a higher level review, and your only option is to present new and relevant evidence under a supplemental review. So that's only if the year of appellate rights has expired at that time. Okay. You have one option at that point.
So we could get really deep into denials and appeals, and I'm going to refer everyone back to the August show where we did a complete hour on this, and they can go supplemental, higher level review, Board of Veterans Appeals, back and forth, all the way around. But please refer back to August of 2024 for this show and let us know if you have any questions. We have a slide on bars to benefits. So I'm going to give, it's a lot there. So acceptance of undesirable discharge, mutiny or espionage, offenses involving moral turpitude, and willful and persistent misconduct. And maybe we'll start with Buck to do acceptance of undesirable discharge, and then maybe kind of rotate with Adam explaining what those are and what a bar to benefit is.
Sure. So there are certain narratives on the discharge that are total bars to benefits. It's in the Code of Federal Regulations. If the veteran falls under these circumstances, there are no benefits that are available. And if you're getting out of the military to avoid a court-martial, that's going to be one of those bars to benefits. It'll more than likely come up as either a dishonorable discharge or a bad conduct discharge, but the importance to the bars to benefits comes under the narrative to discharge in the DD 214. So it'll oftentimes look like willful, persistent misconduct, crime involving moral turpitude, something along that nature. But if those are on the DD 214, it is a total bar to those type of benefits, which would be compensation, health care, education, things of that nature.
There is some circumstances where you can receive via health care if you have a bar to certain benefit. Is that accurate?
Yes, it's under certain circumstances. Oftentimes I see it related to mental health.
Okay. Okay. Adam, mutiny or espionage offenses involving moral turpitude. Do you see these willful and persistent misconduct? It's kind of rolled up into the acceptance of undesirable discharge, correct?
Yeah, so you see them from time to time. These are not common things that you'll see on a daily basis, but like things like mutiny, or rebellion or espionage, spying. These are things that the VA, or when they look at these, they're going to complete the bar. They generally accompany a dishonorable discharge. So if you're put out of the service for any of those, you're going to have a dishonorable discharge, which is going to bar you from, because of the seriousness of those crimes. As far as moral turpitude, you're talking about inherently immoral or dishonest acts, your sexual assaults, frauds, things like that. Again, these typically you'll see those come along with a dishonorable discharge, which is why they inevitably have that bar for benefits.
I think the really important question on this is are there circumstances where a veteran has a dishonorable discharge or an other than honorable discharge, and they're still able to go through this process and file for service-connected disability? What do you think about that?
Definitely can. So there's always benefits that may be eligible, and the VA will do what they call a character of discharge review. This is where they're going to look at the circumstances of your discharge, not just what's on the DD 214 as the discharge. So, and depending on what that discharge type is and the circumstances, they may reach out to the veteran and ask them to provide additional information, provide a letter to explain why they deserve these types of benefits and why should the VA consider their service as honorable for VA purposes. And so they'll look at the entirety of the situation and then determine could they grant benefits, and that's kind of what we were referring to earlier. Can they deny compensation benefits, but maybe grant healthcare benefits?
Thank you, Adam. So we have one more slide. This is the removal of the homosexual acts bar. So specific circumstances related to homosexual acts is no longer a bar to benefits. So there's a lot of law involved with that, and we encourage you to reach out to nonprofit organizations and community service organizations so we can walk you through that a little bit better. I want to wrap this show up real quick. We don't have too much longer. It's very important to visit your VSO so you can understand what a service-connected disability is. There's direct, presumptive, secondary, aggravation, DD 214, why that's important. California, every county has a VSO. There's VSOs located throughout the United States. So I think that kind of wraps it up. Please refer to our shows we mentioned. January, PACTAC. June was toxin exposure, and August was claims and appeals, denials and appeals. That is our discussion. I want to thank you all for guests today. Establishing a service-connected disability can take a little bit of work, but it's a path to valuable benefits that you have earned and deserve.
We hope you have found our conversation educational. We leave you with some resources if you want to dig a little deeper. For help filing any VA claim, a county veteran service office is a great place to start. Find one near you at nacvso.org. Find your service record at National Archives. Just go to archives.gov and click on Veteran Service Record. Swords to Plowshares helps veterans in many ways, including legal help with the VA claim. Find them at swordstoplowshares.org. Veterans Voices is brought to you in part by contributions from the Diablo Valley Veterans Foundation, dedicated to helping veterans near you. American Legion Post 246, honoring the tradition of American Legion in Danville. If you would like to help sponsor Veterans Voices, you can donate to Veterans Voices, care of Diablo Valley Veterans Foundation. Get in touch with them at diabloveterans.org. To rewatch tonight's episode, check back on our homepage later this week or check your cable provider's schedule for rebroadcast times. You can also rewatch this episode and many others on our YouTube channel, Veterans Voices of Contra Costa. So be sure to subscribe. Scan the QR code on your screen to find us on all of our social medias. Our next show will air on Wednesday, February 12th at noon. We will be discussing veterans and mental health. You won't want to miss it. To all of our veterans and their families, thank you for serving. To all of you who tuned in, thanks for watching and have a great day.